Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Dennis Heil, and I am diagnosed with type 2 bipolar disorder with severe depression and high functioning autism. I've been living with bipolar disorder for over 30 years, 15 of which I spent undiagnosed. In 2009, I experienced a depressive psychotic break that led to my diagnosis of type 2 bipolar disorder. I would be diagnosed with autism a few years later. In my podcast, Bluntly Bipolar, I'm going to share with you my experiences and the hard lessons I've learned trying to find some peace and happiness in my life. I hope that by sharing my experiences, others can avoid learning these lessons the hard way. I'm not a mental health professional. All I am is a mental patient with a microphone. Listener discretion is advised. The world looks dreary when you have your eyes seeing clearly is a line from the song Ghetto Gospel by Tupac Shakur. It's a dreary time in America right now, but as someone who's gone through a lot to earn my optimism, I want to share with you 5 reasons to have hope for America as we celebrate our 250th anniversary. The first thing is that Donald Trump and MAGA have ripped the mask off of the propaganda machine that's been aimed at white America since this country's founding. As a straight white man, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, "This isn't the America I know," or "I wish I could go back to the way things were." What you see is what America has always been. It may not have been your America, but it's the same America that slaughtered and screwed the indigenous people, enslaved black people, and treats vulnerable people as disposable. It's the America that marginalizes people of color and women. It's the America that turns a blind eye when an infant takes a bullet or any innocent person, and no one is held accountable. There is no going back to the way things were because this is the way things were and the way things have been. A lot of us were just ignorant to it because a multi-billion-dollar machine ran by a bunch of sociopaths have been flooding us with propaganda since forever. There's only so much manipulation of reality you can do before people start realizing that something is off. Like that Fox News broadcast where Trump was claiming that 45,000 attendees came to his state fair / political rally while they showed images of a basically empty concourse. The sycophants and propagandists will go along with it, but the more extreme they are, the farther they are pushing the centrists and moderates. And that leads me to my second point. More and more people have realized that they can't just not pay attention to politics and everything will just be business as usual. Everything will be all good. There are more and more people of color and women who have gone into politics. You have more and more white moderates and centrists who realize that the whole two wings of the same bird isn't a reality. It used to be before MAGA, but MAGA has grown within the right wing, much like a cancer. Before MAGA, I very much agreed with the two wings of the same bird argument, but now, not so much. Because in my opinion, enablers are just as bad, if not worse, than the perpetrators. You can expect an evil person to do evil things. For example, I've spoken about my friend Sarah on numerous occasions. Sarah was sexually abused starting as a toddler, told her mom what her uncle was doing to her when she was about 7, and her mother blamed her for it and beat her. At first, I couldn't wrap my head around it because I'd never known anyone like her mother. But after I got to know her mother, it made a whole lot more sense. And Sarah eventually decided to exit this life in early 2025, largely from the mental health problems that she had been carrying for so long. But to me, I'm less angry at the monster who did those things to her and far more angry at the numerous family members who turned a blind eye to it for over a decade. I'm not surprised that a child molester molested a child. It's not shocking. But enabling him for a decade? That I just couldn't wrap my head around. It's such a cowardly thing to stand idly by for whatever bullshit reasons a person creates to excuse their own cowardice. But as much as thinking about her mother too much still turns my stomach, I can't hate her. Because knowing what I do about her family and the problems her mother had, she probably experienced the same fucking thing. The third thing is that these authoritarians have significantly misplayed their hand. They didn't understand the value of the game of subtlety that they had been playing since America was founded. They haven't learned the lesson that when you are an unreasonable person who doesn't act in good faith and doesn't respect or honor your agreements, then people who act in good faith don't want to deal with you. I know this from personal experience because I wasn't a good person for a long time. My moral compass can spin like a compass at the North Pole when I'm mentally unstable, and I spent about 20-ish years of my life unstable. I know firsthand what happens when you do underhanded shit. It basically gives the green light to any opposition who are willing to get their hands dirty to play just as, if not more dirty. Because at that point, it can easily transition to a matter of pride and spite. As any spiteful person will tell you, there is no greater motivation to swing back harder than spite. In fact, there have been times in my life where I've swan back on behalf of another person so they wouldn't have to sacrifice their own morals. My hands are already dirty. It's not going to bother me to get them a little dirtier, but I see you over there twisted up in your feelings about whatever mundane thing. And yeah, like there's just no reason for it. I'm reminded of Michelle Obama's, when they go low, we go high. I admire the message. I admire the idea behind it. But y'all have seen what happens when you try to go high when others are willing to go low, low, and lower. Many people are no longer oblivious to how naive that perspective is. Some people can't be reasoned with. Some people can't act in good faith. They don't want to act in good faith. They enjoy the power. They enjoy everything it gives them. And the only way to deal with those people is to play the game just as hard as they do in similar ways. And that brings me to my fourth point. Trump and his cronies have given the rest of America a playbook that works. Now, I'm a white leftist, and I vote. I vote because voting is how we got into this position. This didn't happen overnight. Back in the 80s, neo-Nazis did a rebranding. They told their people to grow their hair out, get off the streets, get into politics and the police force. They wanted respectability so that they could hide behind that veneer of civility instead of, the angry skinhead in the streets. Now, what is happening today is the result of decades of efforts from groups like the Heritage Foundation and Federalist Society, as well as the right-wing extremists. Now, do I like liberal politicians? For the most part, no, not really. Do I still vote for them? Yes, and you should too, because those people are the ones who are more likely to bring left. And this ties into a common criticism that I've heard a lot of people make of leftists, that we spend more time decrying liberals than criticizing the right wing. I'd refer you back to my statement about Sarah, her abuser, and her mother. What's to criticize about someone who's openly proud about being a monster? About people who are openly proud of facilitating fascism and authoritarianism? Many liberal politicians are like that friend who runs his mouth a lot, talks a big game, and then when you actually need them, they're nowhere to be found. Sternly worded letters are the exact same thing as thoughts and prayers. It's meaningless and performative. However, we can use the same apparatus and the same strategy in similar ways. We can influence the Democratic Party the same way the extremists influence the Republican Party. They aren't now or will ever play fair. So why should we exactly? Because we're better than them? Well, you may be, but I'm not. I know that a lot of leftists want their own party or they don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. I get it. I don't want that either. But personally, I don't believe there's going to be a massive overhaul and a clear defeat of capitalism in this country. In my mind, I feel like that's wishful thinking in the same way that the right-wing extremists constantly wish for a race war. Do not throw away your vote. If you can't vote for a progressive, vote for the Democrat. I don't believe that we'll ever see a viable third party as a power block in my lifetime. The Democrats and Republicans are simply too entrenched with too much power. But political parties can change, as any right-winger who wants to talk about how Democrats were the original defenders of slavery will tell you. We can keep forcing the Democrat Party further left by electing more people with leftist ideologies. And what are they going to do? Write sternly worded letters? And finally, I want you to consider the lodgepole pine tree. The lodgepole pine tree has an interesting way of propagating itself. See, its pine cones are covered in a thick, waxy sap. And what happens is when there is a wildfire that burns through an area, that wax melts away and the seeds fall from the cone to the ground. That essentially causes the forest to replenish itself, using the ashes left over from the wildfire as fertilizer. Now, I am aware that now is a very scary time in America. I am aware that a lot of people have been hurt, killed, and live in fear. I know that it's terrifying and that a lot of innocent people are suffering right now. But I also see it as a wildfire that is impossible to ignore. Before, these things were easy to ignore, as we often saw from how disengaged so many people were from politics. Now they're aware of it, and the wildfire is raging. But that fire is also creating the conditions for growth and renewal. There's never been a better opportunity in this country for progress than right now and in the coming years. Now, years ago, I did some volunteer work with a small nonprofit to help drum up some donations. One interesting thing learned about that related to the psychology of people who are willing to donate time or money. You see, it's very, very easy to get someone to care about a thing. The hard part is getting someone to care enough about the thing to go out of the way to inconvenience themselves. That's the difference between someone watching a commercial and saying, "Oh, that's so sad," and then changing the channel versus, "That's so sad," and picks up the phone. Okay. That's why so many fundraising efforts are so heavy handed. A majority of people do not give out of the kindness of their hearts. They give because they are passionate about the subject for some personal reason. They feel compelled to step up and do something, whether that's donating their money or their time. I would not go so far as to label people as inherently selfish, though, because carries such a heavy negative connotation. People do care. Instead, I would say the majority of people are inherently self-interested, because I often hear criticism about, well, some people only care when it affects them. Correct. You are 100% correct. Most people only care about themselves, their own lives, and what's happening around them. You can be sad about it, you can be upset about it, but I'm telling you right now, it's the way the entire fucking marketing industry works. You appeal to people's self-interest first and foremost. To get them to break out of that box, you have to cross that threshold of "I care about this" to "I must do something about this." You have to make them uncomfortable enough to take action. You have to find the soft spot, slip a knife in, and slowly twist until they go, all right, I need to do something." Trump, MAGA, everything that's going on right now, there are a lot of people who cared who are now in a position where they are very uncomfortable. And if you think I'm off base on this, I would refer you to Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. Quote, "I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I've almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who's more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, 'I agree with you in the goal you see, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action,' who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." End quote. It's not bewildering to me at all. Not with that context about donation psychology. People are self-interested, and they're mostly interested in their own comfort and peace. Disturbing their comfort is how you spur them to action. And if it takes making some people uncomfortable to save lives or put money in the pockets of people doing the work so they can keep doing their work, then so be it. Discomfort isn't going to kill you. Discomfort isn't going to kill anyone. And that is what I would like you to take away from this episode. If you are an activist, there's no better time to double down on your efforts. If you are someone who is unhappy and scared about what's going on, get involved. Be around other people who are actively working to make things better. Be around other people who are working to make a difference. Do what you can to the best of your ability where you can. And if you can't, that's okay. Some people can't, disabilities, sickness, and maybe you're in an unsafe area. If you can't, you can't. That's fine. But there is nothing that helps peel back the fear more than actually putting your hands onto the problem. What a privilege it is to be alive in this time in American history. What a privilege it is to see the 250th anniversary of our country, despite our country's many flaws and shortcomings. The wildfire rages, but sooner or later, it's going to go out. And while it rages, it's dropping seeds all throughout America, and we see them cropping up both in politics and activist circles. As a person who spent about 2 decades in the pit of bipolar depression, I am relentlessly optimistic about this time in American history. Yes, a lot of people are suffering right now, and that's unfortunate. But the reality is that suffering and injustice have always been a part of America's story. But now, a lot more people are aware of it. A lot more people are looking around and saying, is this acceptable? And deciding it's not. Now we are in a place where meaningful progress is more possible than ever. I don't love America as it is, but I love what America could be. A place where all men, women, and people who don't identify within those paradigms are treated with equality, fairness, and respect. A place where our vulnerable are protected and cared for instead of exploited and discarded. A place where justice means something and where it applies equally to all. Have a happy and safe 4th of July. Thank you for spending your time with me. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out and share this with someone you think it might help.